Hi everybody, it's Christina Quick, the Tarot Biz Mentor here from the Profitable Psychic Business Academy. Welcome to today's video. We're going to be continuing on in our series about soulmates and twin flames, and this is to support my psychic love advisors and everybody who has been working on the psychic hotlines or set up their own Etsy shop. I'm sure you've noticed by now that love and relationships is a really big part of our career. And this idea of soulmates and twin flames, right? So first and foremost, I want to preface today's video in this training by stating that soulmates are not necessarily always romantic partners. In my last video, I talked a little bit about my soul cloud theory and talking about like what I feel soul families are, my ideas when it comes to sharing past lives with soulmates and so on and so forth. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes soulmates so special and who they can be in our lives. So soulmates, when I think of soulmates, I'm not thinking of just exclusively romantic partners. I'm not thinking of boyfriends. I'm not thinking of girlfriends necessarily. Though soulmates can become romantic partners very, very easily. That being said, you have soulmate friends, you have soulmate family, you have soulmate clients, you have soulmate coworkers. Anybody in your life can be a soulmate as long as they share a similar vision for the future. They share similar beliefs, morals, values, these types of things that create and make up our personal gnosis, our personal identity in this life, right? But most importantly is that they share a vision for the future and they want us to be the best version of ourselves. Soulmate relationships can be toxic because we're not just born as pure spiritual beings in this world. We grow up with trauma and we grow up with ancestral trauma and we grow up with culture and society and all of these beliefs and values that society and culture have and have been imprinted on us. So a lot of our spiritual journey in general is unraveling all of these projected realities that we are living through and kind of coming back to our most spiritual, authentic self where we decide what is correct and not correct for ourselves through body autonomy, right? So this is going to be a little bit of a long one. I have my notes here. Let's get into it. So the very first thing you're going to notice when you are in the presence of a soulmate is that it's going to feel like you've already known them. Like you walk into their life and you already know, you already connect with them on a deeply intimate level, right? There's this feeling of familiarity. It's not a forced transactional relationship. And that's the most beautiful thing about soulmate relationships. And there's 6 signs that I'm going to share with you today about how you know that you are in the presence of a soulmate. So the first sign is actually the gift of presence. Soulmates are people that you connect with and vibe with on a level to where they're always there. It's not it, and we have to think about it through, we're not saying that they're always available, but we're saying that soulmates are not people that you have to chase for their time and affection, right? When you're in the presence of a soulmate, you're within their presence. They willingly offer their time and presence to you when available, right? That doesn't mean we have poor boundaries or anything like that. But, you've met people where it's like you really like them and you want to hang out with them or you want to get to know them, but they're always busy or they never have time for you, or there's all of these pretenses that people build up around themselves to get to people. And it's with soulmates, you have that heart-to-heart connection almost instantaneously, and there's not that pretense around there, right? They're really, really easy to be around. Like you don't have to force the interaction. They're easy to be around. It's easy for them to be around you. You're not worrying about they're judging you or what they're, thinking about you. There's none of that. There's just this radical acceptance of who we are in the moment, which makes a relationship with a soulmate so, so, so special. Also, you will probably have less anxiety. And we'll talk about why. That's going to be another one of them coming up. So soulmate sign number 2 is the gift of communication. So we spend so much time trying to build down these walls of people to get to know them and trying to or break down these, not build up these walls, break down these walls of people, breaking down our own walls too. So the second sign is the gift of communication. So when you're in the presence of a soulmate, a lot of those pretenses are gone. A lot of those hoops, that we have to jump through to get to know someone, a lot of that doesn't exist. And when you're talking with the soulmate, communication is never forced. I know that you've been in a situation where you've had to talk to someone or you wanted to talk to someone and it's like you just couldn't think of what to say. They didn't seem that interested in what you had to say. You struggle to find things to talk about. But when you're with the soulmate, communication is very easy. You guys can talk about silly things. You guys can talk about deep things. You guys can talk about anything. It's just there's a natural flow to the conversation and nothing seems forced. And there's also this, what happens is there's this radical honesty that happens, and that can seem really intimidating because how many of us are radically honest with every person that we meet? We're not. Let's just be honest about that, right? But, when you are in the presence of a soulmate, you do have this very, very powerful telepathic connection with them. And it's almost kind of like you have a direct link to their brain in a way where you kind of know what they're thinking. And after spending time together, you can begin to finish each other's sentences. You can just look at each other and you know exactly what you're thinking. It's kind of like having that energy of having a best friend that just sort of gets you. Also, I don't know if you've ever noticed this too, but with soulmates, and way you can tell about soulmates is that when you think it, just you're sitting there and you randomly think of them, they'll text you or they'll call you or vice versa, right? They'll reach out or something because you have that telepathic gift. Soulmate sign number 3 is the gift of intimacy. Soulmates relationships kind of can get a bad rap because they can be very intense, and within soulmate relationships, things can happen very quickly. So, for example, if you were in a soulmate relationship with a friend or a potential romantic partner, it's really not unusual to just, for soulmates to immediately move in together and start this whole new life together, even if it's just best friends. When you meet your soulmate, it's kind of hard to imagine a life without them there. You want to be around them. They want to be around you. And this sort of healthy version of kind of codependency forms. And that's kind of like controversial in a way. See if I can get this to focus on me. No. Okay, anyways, it's kind of controversial in a way because typically speaking about it, fast moving relationships are kind of seen as this negative thing. You don't want to jump into this relationship. You want to think about kind of what you're doing. And overall, the general consensus is that, moving fast within a relationship is kind of seen as this negative thing. But when you're in the presence of a soulmate, they give you the gift of intimacy and things can go from 0 to 100 very, very, very quickly. So it's not uncommon to meet a soulmate and move in right away or get married right away or, make these big commitment power moves really, really, really quickly. And that's just one of the things that kind of happens with soulmates and intimacy, and that can be really scary. And that's kind of where sometimes soulmates can run away just as quick as they run together because that sort of intimacy can be very, very intimidating. It can be very overwhelming. When you meet people in general, it takes a while to get to know someone. It can take months. It can take years to actually get to know someone on an intimate level. But when you're with a soulmate, that time is kind of cut short because those walls are broken down. There's radical honesty. There's radical acceptance of one another. And so it's just one of those things where things can happen very, very, very quickly. And this is why soulmates often move towards commitment in relationships sooner than most. Soulmate sign number 4, the gift of reciprocity. So this is going to be all about boundaries. Now, I'm not saying that soulmates are perfect with boundaries. Again, we are individual beings. We have incarnated and we have experienced trauma. We've experienced culture. We've experienced society. So there's all of these different, projections going on towards us on a 24-hour basis. It's one of those things where it's very easy to become very drained by people, especially if their values and ethics and beliefs and things like that don't line up to ours, especially if you're an introvert. I know many people on a spiritual level who identify as being primarily introverted. You will have those introverted, extroverted people. You will also find very extroverted spiritual people as well. But overwhelmingly, I've noticed that people in spirituality tend to be more introverted. And I think it's because we're more conscious of our energy. It's not necessarily that we don't want to be around people. It's just that we're very, very conscious about where our energy is spent because we become very conscious about psychic vampirism. And psychic vampirism is a real problem out there, okay? A lot of us have dealt with that before and can relate to psychic vampirism and that being a problem in our career field especially too. But on a personal level, just as, Loki's got to chime in. He's my black kitty. He's got to have an opinion. But when you're with a soulmate, that you don't feel like you're drained. In fact, even if you're an introverted person, it can sort of feel like you still want to be around that person, even though that's not in your nature. So if you find yourself thinking, I really want to be around this person, even though I'm not really a people person, good chance that, you are dealing with a potential soulmate here. Yes, what? And as far as reciprocity goes, that basically means that there is an equal give and take in the relationship, meaning that interactions are never forced, things are never forced like that, conversations are never forced. You give when you give and you get when you get. And there's not this sense of I have to, when you are friends with people, it's like they invite you somewhere, then you got to invite them. And there's this whole etiquette, that goes around with that. But with soulmates, you don't really have to deal with that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily going to drain you, and they're not going to be highly, highly psychic vampiric. However, they can be, and we'll talk about that at some point too, when soulmates go wrong, right? Soulmate sign number 5, the gift of respect. So because soulmates tend to be fierce givers and protectors, there's this natural respect that's already established in a relationship. So there's not going to be a lot of trying to force one another to go do things or, breaking those boundaries. Respect, there's this people feel one way or another. People either feel respect is given or respect is earned. I'm kind of somewhere there in the middle where some level of respect should be automatically given, but most cases respect is an earned thing in relationships. But with soulmates, that's kind of already there. They're very respectful of you and your time. And because soulmate relationships can go so quickly together within intimacy, and they can go to these commitment places very, very quickly, it also works in the fact that if you were moving to it too quickly, or it was too much or too intimidating or too overwhelming, the relationship as a whole, that they would back off. Okay. And so if you're dealing with someone who's not backing off, but you feel that you have a soulmate connection, it could be a karmic partner and not a soulmate. And we'll talk about that in one of the next videos. How do I tell a soulmate versus a karmic partner? And basically if they do any of these things against what I'm saying, or they do it in a negative way, they're basically a karmic partner. Okay. Backing off, when you're in a soulmate relationship with someone, friends, romantic or otherwise, it can be very intimidating and you might need to take a step back. So soulmates as themselves are very cautious about becoming psychic vampires themselves. They don't want to be psychic vampires. They don't want to psychically drain other people. And so they're going to give you that space. If you need space, they're going to say, okay. It doesn't mean you're not, that there isn't a sadness there or something, but it does mean that they're going to respect your wishes, and they're going to respect you and your needs, and they're going to listen to you, and they're going to mirror back what it is that you actually need from the relationship, whether that's space or more commitment. Could work either way. Soulmate sign number 6, and this is the last one we're going to talk about, which is the gift of healing. So as I mentioned, everybody experiences trauma. We all experience trauma. We're all born into society. We're all born into culture, and these projections are bombarding us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And the reality is that everybody struggles. Every single person on this planet is born into trauma. Being born is traumatic. And so we're all walking around with this trauma. But even soulmates have trauma. And in reality, soulmates are spiritual people who are very, very aware of how their trauma is influencing the world around them and their relationships around them. Again, soulmates are people that are on a spiritual journey. Soulmate relationships are overwhelmingly positive, beneficial, mutually beneficial relationships that we have with other people, right? And so as a soulmate, let's say you are born into, you have an abandonment wound. One of your parents abandoned you when you were a child. And so you grow up thinking that the world is unsafe and people are unreliable. And this is your projection that you have projected out, and this is your trauma. A soulmate is going to help you overcome that trauma by being a stable person in your life. They're going to see and understand that trauma, and they're going to model what you need in order to heal. Now, let's say one of your soulmates was a victim of emotional abuse. And so they learned that they could never speak their mind, and they learned that standing up for themselves was unsafe because they experienced negativity due to that. As a soulmate, it is your divine duty to help your soulmate stand up for themselves and to encourage them to work through that trauma. So this is one of the really, really big things about soulmates, is that it's always going to be a mutually beneficial relationship. It's always going to be a healing relationship. That doesn't mean it won't be challenging. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be fights and disagreements. We are human after all. But it means that soulmates are going to help you heal yourself. And as light workers, that is what we are here to do. We are here to help heal the planet. Whether your healing story is like mine, where you're healing thousands of people online or in person as a spiritual life coach, or you're simply healing your own trauma and you're making a better world for your descendants and your children or people in your family, or whatever your healing story is. It can be a really big healing story. It could be a really, really small one, but they all have ripples, and they all are soulmates are all on a healing journey. So I hope you liked this video. I hope this was informative to you. If you have any other signs that you are in the presence of a soulmate, I would love to hear them. How do you know that you're in the presence of a soulmate? These are some of the ways that I know. In the next video, we're going to be talking about twin flame contracts. How does a soulmate go to a twin flame? And there's an ascension process within that journey. So I will see you in the next video.